I was halfway to the podium when a chair scraped behind me sharp enough to split the moment open. At my own graduation ceremony, my sister rose and pointed at me like she was delivering a verdict. She cheated her way through college. No whisper, no hesitation, just a clean public execution. The acoustics of the historic Boston Hall caught her voice and amplified it, bouncing the accusation off the vaulted ceilings. My parents froze. The audience gasped. But I didn't flinch. I didn't look back. I just checked my internal clock. She was exactly on schedule. Before I tell you what happened next, drop a comment and let me know where you're listening from. Have you ever been accused of something you didn't do? I want to hear your story. To understand why I didn't run, why I didn't cry, why I stood on that stage like a statue carved out of ice. You have to understand the house I grew up in. You have to understand the physics of my family. For 22 years, I lived with an invisible anchor chained to my ankle. It wasn't something you could see, but you could feel the drag of it every time you tried to take a step forward. It's a specific kind of suffocation. Have you ever tried to scream underwater? You open your mouth, you push with everything you have, your lungs burn, and the bubbles rush out in a chaotic stream, but up on the surface, nothing. The water remains perfectly flat. The world hears nothing. That was my existence. I was the scream trapped beneath the surface, while my sister, Sierra, was the shimmering reflection on top that everyone stopped to admire. While I was pulling all-nighters in the freezing engineering labs at my university, calculating fluid dynamics and stress fractures for my environmental capstone, Sierra was in the living room setting up ring lights. She was 25, living rent-free in the master guest suite, and her career was an endless loop of unboxing videos and sponsored posts for tea that didn't work. But to my parents, Richard and Susan, Sierra wasn't unemployed. She was building a brand. I was just studying. I remember coming home one weekend, about 3 months before graduation. I was exhausted, vibrating with caffeine and anxiety, because I'd just cracked a major variable in my water filtration project. It was the kind of breakthrough that lands you job offers before you even have your diploma. I walked into the kitchen, desperate to share it. Just to have someone acknowledge that the sleepless nights were worth it. I finally fixed the filtration algorithm, I said. I remember the smell of burnt toast hanging in the air. The dean thinks it could be patented. My father didn't look up from his tablet. He was scrolling through Sierra's Instagram feed. "That's nice, Lauren," he mumbled, "but keep your voice down. Sierra is filming a story in the foyer, and the acoustics are tricky." "It's a patent, Dad," I pressed, feeling that anchor drag heavy on my leg. "It's huge." My mother turned from the sink, but her eyes weren't warm. They were tired, like dealing with me was a chore she hadn't scheduled. "You're always so intense, Lauren," she sighed. "Always with the data and the bragging. Why can't you just be happy for your sister? She just hit 10,000 followers. That's real influence. That's people actually liking what she does." There it was, the gaslighting. It wasn't just that they didn't care about engineering, it was that they actively reframed my hard work as a character flaw. My ambition was intensity. My success was arrogance. Meanwhile, Sierra's vanity was framed as influence. I stood there, holding my groundbreaking news in my hands like a dead bird, realizing that no matter what I built, no matter how high I climbed in the academic world, in this house, I would always be the invisible infrastructure. Sierra was the facade, the pretty paint job, and I was just the plumbing necessary, ignored, and expected to work silently until I broke. I went upstairs to my room and closed the door. I didn't know it then, but the anchor was about to snap. I sat at my desk, opened my laptop to check my cloud data, and saw the first glitch. A single decimal point, moved 2 places to the left. It looked like a mistake. But engineers don't believe in mistakes. We believe in variables. And this variable had a name. The first anomaly was small. Tiny, really. Just a decimal point. In my final thermodynamics simulation, a variable for thermal resistance had shifted from 0.04 to 0.4. It sounds insignificant, but in engineering, that decimal point is the difference between a stable structure and a catastrophic failure. I stared at the screen, rubbing my eyes. Maybe I was tired, maybe I'd slipped. I corrected it, saved the file, and logged out. But the next morning, it was back. And not just that one, 2 other values had been altered. A pressure gauge setting was maxed out, a safety threshold was lowered. This wasn't a glitch. This was sabotage. My stomach dropped, a cold stone settling in my gut. I went downstairs, laptop in hand, needing to tell someone. Richard and Susan were in the living room, helping Sierra unpack a mountain of shopping bags. "Someone's messing with my data," I said, my voice tight. "My Cloud Lab account. Things are changing overnight." Susan held up a designer purse, admiring the stitching. "Oh, Lauren, don't be so dramatic. You're probably just stressed. You know how you get when you haven't slept." "It's not stress, Mom. It's digital. Someone logged in." Richard looked over his reading glasses, his expression one of mild annoyance. "You're always finding conspiracies, Lauren. Remember when you thought the Wi-Fi was being throttled? You're too intense. You need to relax. Maybe take a page from your sister's book and go for a spa day." Sierra laughed, a bright tinkling sound. "Yeah, Lo. You're so paranoid. Who would want to hack your boring science project? It's probably just a system update." They didn't believe me, or worse, they didn't care. I walked away, feeling the gaslighting wrap around me like a suffocating blanket. Too intense, paranoid, dramatic. They were rewriting my reality in real time. But the real blow came 3 days later. I got an email from the bursar's office. "Urgent, final tuition payment rejected, insufficient funds." I stared at the screen. That account was a trust, set up by my grandmother specifically for education. It was supposed to have enough to cover my final semester and then some. I logged into the bank portal. Balance: $14.12. I scrolled through the transaction history, my heart hammering against my ribs. Withdrawals: dozens of them. Transfers to external accounts. Payments to credit cards I didn't recognize. $48,000. Gone. Drained over the last 18 months. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. The engineer in me took over. I needed data. I needed to trace the leak. Because this wasn't just about money anymore. This was an existential threat. If I couldn't pay tuition, I couldn't graduate. If my data was corrupted, I'd fail my capstone. Someone wasn't just being mean, they were trying to erase my future. I closed my laptop and looked at the empty chair where my parents should have been sitting, helping me figure this out. But they weren't there. They never were. I was on my own. And for the first time, I realized that the danger wasn't outside the house. It was sitting at the dinner table. I didn't go back downstairs to scream at them. I didn't beg for an explanation. Emotion is just noise in a system, and I needed a clean signal. I treated this like a structural failure analysis. You don't yell at the cracked beam. You find the stress point. I called Caleb. We'd met in a coding elective freshman year, a quiet guy who lived in the server rooms and treated firewalls like suggestions. We met an hour later in the basement of the computer science building, the hum of the cooling fans providing a white noise shield. "I need you to trace an IP, I said, sliding my laptop across the metal table. "And I need you to run a full credit check on my social security number." Deep dive. Caleb didn't ask why. He just cracked his knuckles and started typing. For 20 minutes, the only sound was the clatter of keys. Then he stopped. He turned the screen toward me. "The data intrusion on your cloud account," he said, pointing to a string of numbers. "It's not a proxy, it's not a VPN, it's a local device. Specifically, a MacBook Pro registered to Sierra Influencer 1. I stared at the screen. I wasn't surprised, but seeing the digital fingerprint felt like a physical blow. Sierra. My sister wasn't just jealous, she was actively trying to engineer my expulsion. "And the finances?" I asked, my voice flat. Caleb clicked a new tab. "It's bad, Lauren. You have 3 credit cards opened in your name in the last year. All maxed out. $15,000 in debt. The billing address is your parents' house, but the email on file is a burner account linked to Sierra's phone number." I looked at the transaction history. Designer handbags. A trip to Tulum. Business expenses for an influencer career that made 0 revenue. She had stolen my tuition money to fund her lifestyle, and when that wasn't enough, she stole my identity. "Why now?" I whispered. "Why sabotage my data? She already has the money. Caleb looked at me, his expression grim. It's called a narcissistic collapse. She knows you're about to graduate. You're about to get a high-paying job, leave the house, and become successful. That threatens her reality. If you succeed, her mediocrity is exposed. She doesn't just want your money, she needs to destroy your future to keep her fragile ego intact. She's burning the house down because she's terrified of the cold. It made sense. Horrifying, mathematical sense. But there was one variable left, my parents. Did they know? Caleb, I said. Can you get into the family shared cloud? Already in. He opened a folder marked tax docs, but inside, there was a saved email draft from my father's account, dated 2 weeks ago. Subject, damage control. I read the words, and the ground fell out from under me. Sierra, stop spending. We can't hide the tuition gap forever. I'm trying to move funds from the retirement account to cover it, but it takes time. Just keep Lauren distracted. If she focuses on her project issues, she won't check the bank. We'll fix this before she finds out. My father, Richard. He wasn't a victim of Sierra's lies. He was her accomplice. He knew she stole the money. He knew she was sabotaging me. And his solution wasn't to stop her, it was to help her hide the body. I closed the laptop. The hum of the servers sounded like a funeral dirge. I had no family. I had enemies who shared my last name. What do you want to do? Caleb asked. We can go to the police right now. No, I said, standing up. The anchor on my leg was gone, replaced by something colder, sharper. The police is the end game. First, I have a graduation to attend. I didn't go home that night. I slept on a cot in the engineering lab, surrounded by the hum of servers and the smell of ozone. It was the only place that felt safe. By 8 a.m., I was standing outside the office of Dean Sterling, the head of the engineering department. I didn't have an appointment, but I had a 3-inch binder that said I didn't need one. When his assistant tried to wave me off, I simply placed the binder on her desk. Tell him it concerns an active security breach in the departmental cloud, I said. And tell him the breach came from inside my house. 2 minutes later, I was sitting across from him. Dean Sterling was a man who viewed emotion as an inefficiency. He looked at the logs Caleb had pulled. He looked at the altered variables in my capstone. He read the email from my father. His expression didn't change, but the air in the room grew heavy, charged with a specific kind of academic fury. To him, stealing money was a crime, but falsifying data? That was a sin. They tried to compromise the integrity of this institution to cover a petty theft, he said, closing the binder. We will expel your sister. We will notify the authorities. That's not enough, I said. My voice didn't shake. Sierra thrives on attention. If we handle this quietly, she'll spin it. She'll tell everyone I was jealous, that I hacked her, that I'm the crazy one. She's already seeded that narrative with my family. She's going to make a scene at graduation. I know her. She needs the climax. The dean leaned back, steepled his fingers. What are you proposing, Lauren? Let her do it, I said. Let her stand up, let her scream, let her stake her entire reputation on the lie. And then, when there is absolutely no way for her to backtrack, we execute Protocol B. I laid out the plan. It was risky. It required the university police to be waiting in the wings. Not for crowd control, but for an arrest. It required the dean to play along until the very last second. He looked at me for a long moment, assessing not just the evidence, but me. He didn't see a student anymore. He saw an engineer, who had calculated the load-bearing capacity of her own life. Protocol B, he repeated. A thin, cold smile touched his lips. I'll make the call. The morning of graduation broke with a sky so blue it looked artificial. The house was a hive of nervous energy. Sierra was manic, bouncing from room to room in a white blazer that cost more than my stolen tuition. She was playing the role of the supportive sister, fixing my collar, smoothing my gown, offering me coffee with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Big day, Lo, she chirped, her voice too high, too tight. Are you nervous? You look a little pale. Don't worry, we're all gonna be there cheering for you. I looked at her, really looked at her. I saw the tremor in her hands. I saw the way her eyes darted to my father every time I walked into the room. She was terrified. She knew the tuition bill was due on Monday. She knew she had 48 hours to destroy my credibility, so that when the missing money came to light, no one would believe the cheater. "I'm fine," I said, just focused. Richard and Susan were pacing by the door, checking their watches. let's go," my father muttered. "We need good seats." He wouldn't meet my eyes. He was already mourning the image he was about to lose, convinced that I was the problem he had to manage. I went to the bathroom one last time. I reached into my pocket and touched the cold metal of a USB drive. It contained everything: the logs, the bank statements, the emails, a digital copy of the binder currently sitting on the dean's podium. I didn't need to give it to anyone. The dean already had the hard copies. But carrying it felt like carrying a talisman. A silver bullet. I looked in the mirror. The girl staring back wasn't the invisible daughter anymore. She wasn't the anchor. She was the storm. I walked out to the car, slid into the back seat, and watched the house disappear in the rearview mirror. I knew I would never step foot in it again. "Ready?" Sierra asked from the front seat, turning to grin at me. "More than you know," I whispered. The scream tore through the auditorium, a jagged rip in the ceremonial quiet. "She faked her research. It's all a lie." Sierra was standing, pointing a manicured finger directly at me. Her face was flushed, her eyes wide with a triumphant madness. She looked like a martyr finally revealing the heretic. The audience gasped as one, a collective intake of breath that sucked the air out of the room. Heads turned. Whispers erupted. My parents, Richard and Susan, froze in their seats, their faces masks of horrified shock not at the accusation, but at the public spectacle. Their carefully curated image was cracking in real time. I stood up. My legs felt heavy, but steady. This was the moment I had calculated for. The variables were locked. The trajectory was set. I walked down the aisle. The click of my heels on the hardwood floor was a metronome, counting down the seconds to impact. People stared, some with pity, some with morbid curiosity. I kept my eyes fixed on the podium, where Dean Sterling stood, his face unreadable. Sierra was still shouting, her voice growing shrill. Ask her about the data. She hacked the cloud. She stole the tuition money. She's a fraud." Security guards started moving down the side aisles, but they hesitated, unsure of the protocol for a family meltdown. I reached the stage stairs. 1 step, 2 steps, 3. I crossed the stage, the bright lights blinding me for a second, isolating me in a pool of white. I reached the podium. Dean Sterling looked at me. His eyes flickered to the family section, then back to me. I leaned in. The microphone caught the rustle of my gown. The entire hall held its breath, waiting for my defense. My denial, my tears. Instead, I whispered 2 words. Protocol B. The dean gave a barely perceptible nod. He turned to the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, please remain seated," he signaled to the wings. The heavy velvet curtains parted, but it wasn't university security who stepped out. It was 2 officers in plain clothes, followed by a uniformed campus police officer. They didn't move toward me. They moved into the audience. They walked straight to row 4, seat 12. Sierra stopped screaming. Her arm dropped. Confusion flickered across her face, replacing the triumph. She looked at the officers, then at our parents, then back at me. "Ma'am," one of the officers said, his voice carrying clearly in the stunned silence. "Sierra, we have a warrant for your arrest." "What?" Sierra laughed, a brittle, incredulous sound. "No, you want her. She's the fraud. She's the one who—" "We have the logs, ma'am," the officer interrupted, his tone bored. "Professional. Identity theft. Grand larceny. Computer fraud. And as of this moment, slander per se." My mother stood up, clutching her pearls. "Officers, there must be a mistake. This is a graduation. You can't just—" "Sit down, ma'am, or you'll be cited for obstruction," the officer said without looking at her. He reached for Sierra's arm. She pulled back, wild-eyed. "Daddy, do something. Tell them about the email." Richard sank lower in his seat, his face gray. He wouldn't look at her. He wouldn't look at me. He was watching his reputation dissolve, realizing that his attempt to hide the body had just become public record. The officers handcuffed her. The click of the metal was louder than her screaming had been. As they led her out, she looked back at me one last time. Her eyes were filled with a hate so pure it burned. But beneath it, I saw the terror. The cold had finally gotten in. The doors swung shut behind them. The silence that followed was absolute. Dean Sterling cleared his throat. He picked up a diploma cover from the stack. He looked at me, a small, genuine smile breaking his stoic mask. "Lauren," he said, his voice warm, "congratulations." He handed me the diploma. I took it. It felt light. The applause started slowly, a few confused claps from the engineering faculty, then the students joined in. Then the parents. Within seconds, the room was roaring. It wasn't just polite applause, it was a wave of sound. A collective recognition of survival. I looked out at the sea of faces. I looked at the empty seats where my family had been. And for the first time in 22 years, I didn't feel the anchor. I felt weightless. The weeks that followed were a blur of legal paperwork and boxes. I didn't go back to the house to pack. I hired movers to do it while my parents were at a lawyer's office, trying to figure out how to defend against multiple felony charges. I didn't speak to them. I blocked their numbers, their emails, their social media. Silence wasn't just a strategy anymore, it was a lifestyle. I visited the engineering lab one last time. It was late, and the building was empty, save for the hum of the servers. I sat at my old workstation, the place where I had discovered the first glitch. It felt like a lifetime ago. Caleb walked in, holding 2 coffees. He sat down next to me, sliding a cup across the desk. "You know," he said, "I traced the final transfer of your tuition money. Sierra spent the last $2,000 on a branding consultation for an influencer course she never launched." I laughed. A dry, humorless sound. "Of course she did. It was never about the money, Caleb. It was about the illusion. She needed to believe she was special so badly that she was willing to become a criminal to prove it." "And your parents?" "They're selling the house," I said. "Legal fees, restitution." The fraud investigation expanded to my dad's business accounts. "Turns out, hiding assets is a family tradition." Caleb nodded. "You did the right thing, Lauren. You know that, right?" "I know," I said. "But it doesn't feel like a victory. It just feels quiet." "Quiet is good," he said. "Quiet means the noise is gone. Quiet means you can finally hear yourself think." He was right. For 22 years, my life had been a cacophony of their demands, their drama, their expectations. Now, there was just the hum of the servers and the beat of my own heart. I stood up and picked up my bag. "I got the job in California," I said. "Sustainable water systems for a tech campus in Palo Alto. They offered me a signing bonus that covers the rest of my student loans." Caleb smiled. "Send me a postcard." "I will." I walked out of the lab, out of the university, and into the cool Boston night. I didn't look back. A week later, I was standing on a beach in California. The Pacific Ocean stretched out before me, vast and indifferent. The air smelled of salt and sage, so different from the ozone and anxiety of my old life. I took my phone out of my pocket. I had one final thing to do. I opened my contacts and scrolled to the blocked list. Richard, Susan, Sierra. I didn't unblock them. I deleted them. Gone. Erased from my digital life just as they had been erased from my physical one. I looked at the waves crashing against the shore. People think revenge is loud. They think it's screaming matches and thrown vases. But real revenge, the kind that lasts, is simply refusing to participate in your own destruction. It's walking away when they expect you to beg. It's building a life so full, so complete, that their absence is just a detail, not a tragedy. I took a deep breath, filling my lungs with clean ocean air. The anchor was gone. The water was wide open. And for the first time, I wasn't just surviving. I was swimming. Silence isn't weakness. It's the pause before the thunder. If you've ever had to stay silent to survive, this story is for you. Share it if you believe the truth always wins in the end, and don't forget to subscribe. The grammar has been corrected to ensure a Native American English flow, and all numbers have been converted into words for seamless narration.